Alright, hey guys, Pax here, and welcome back to another Pokemon Pocket video. As the title states, this is going to be a weekly meta report going over several meta decks from tournaments this past week. It's been a while since I've done this. It has been very much a while, but I decided to do this because, for one thing, this will be the last meta report for Series A, because keep in mind, relatively soon Series B will coming out, which will most likely change the meta drastically, especially with the addition of Mega EXs. And yeah, with that being said, consider liking and subscribing, because I'll definitely be covering those cards once they drop. And without further ado, let's get right into it. So if you guys are a new viewer as well as a recurring viewer, since I am changing the format for how I do these videos very slightly, so I'm basically going to be looking over several meta-relevant decks from popular tournaments this week, probably just looking at 3 tournaments, basically giving my takes on certain decks and just kind of like looking at the future as well, if it's good, if it's a good investment, if it's not. I'm using the website play.limitlesstcg.com. The link to it will be in the description below. A very good website for tournaments overall. Just like, it's amazing just looking at past tournaments as well as upcoming tournaments. So it's if you ever want to kind of like organize a tournament, I suggest using this website. Very good from what I've seen. And I'm not really sponsored. I'm not sponsored just yet, but if you want to sponsor me, yeah, just let me know. But I'll also be using Pokemon Zone, again, hashtag not sponsored. Basically just to bring up some cards, just get a better view, because this website's amazing when it comes to just if you want to look up a certain card. Like, let's say you're in rank and your opponent pulls out like a card that you're not really familiar with, like a basic Pokemon, and you want to see the stage 2 of that. You can very much just like look it up like this, and then like just find a card you want. Again, not sponsored, but if you want sponsor me, just let me know. The link to this website will also be in the description below. But without further ado, let's get right into it. So we're pretty much going to be going over 3 tournaments. First tournament we're going to be going over is the Pocket Mats tournament number 4. And this is pretty notable because Greninja is banned. Now, I don't want to spoil the next 2 tournaments, but in those 2 tournaments, Greninja is free game. You can use them. Not really that many limitations from what I've seen. But for this one, Greninja is banned, so this is pretty good to just kind of take a mental note, because Suicuine Greninja is still pretty huge to this day. Definitely one of the most popular decks that I've seen in ranked and just like everywhere pretty much. So yeah, it's gonna be looking. So the first place winner is Doug Z92. Props to him. So his record, he won 12, lost twice. This is a deck right here. So he's running a Darkrai and Arceus Ex deck. And okay, yeah, this is a Pokemon. Let's just get a better view. So this is the deck he's using. So for this deck, you can be super aggressive. So ideally, of course, you do want to go, you can go either first or second, running 7 baby Pokemon. Interesting. Look at this, man. If you like baby Pokemon in the game, this is a deck for you, definitely. So you can be super aggressive as well as stall. So of course we have Arceus, Snorlax, and even Darkrai. All 3 of these benefit from baby Pokemon. Darkrai a lot less, but let's just get a better view right here. So Darkrai, keep in mind, requires 2 darkness energy, but the 3rd one is colorless. And this guy is basic, so yeah, once again, benefiting from babies because they only work with basics. So yeah, so with that being said, you can just play this super aggressive with Tyrogue as well as stalling. It's like a good mixture, because what I mean by aggressive, I mean like just chipping. Like you can potentially do 40 damage a turn just using Tyrogue. Granted, I mean, this guy is kind of a glass cannon. Just pull up a better image right here. Not really that popular compared to all the other baby Pokemon. Like, definitely not bad, but compared to, of course, the energy supports, all the other ones right here, yeah, not really seeing as much play as compared to them, but still very good. So Slappy Knuckle, 20 damage, but you could pair that with Darkrai. Darkrai's Nightmare Aura does 20 damage once fed, so you can do 40, which one-shots, basically one-shots baby Pokemon. So let's say you go second, you can just one-shot your opponent's baby Pokemon, essentially getting a free point. Sure, to get value their first turn, but still, like, that's a pretty good point. Like, really, like, depending on your opponent's deck, they are running EXs. That 1 point that you take early game could determine if you win or lose later on. So, yeah, very interesting. Also, Snorlax, okay, yeah. You want to play it kind of passively, just, like, making sure that your opponent does get shipped. And for babies, you can definitely feed Snorlax and Arceus. Snorlax is pretty good. Does 130, but does require a bit of build-up. That's like the main issue. But with baby Pokemon, you can potentially get this guy built towards your 3rd or 4th turn if you go second, just maximizing your energy. Ability is pretty nice as well, just basically healing the Snorlax after attacking. The main downside is that after attacking, Pokemon is now asleep. But from the looks of this, you definitely want to play Snorlax probably towards the middle to most likely late game. So ideally, like towards the mid game, sub in Darkrai, attack with Darkrai once that guy dies, sub in Snorlax. And the main issue, again, is because of the attack ability. yeah, that's why I feel like you should probably run this towards the late game. Just looking at this, I mean, you could definitely run something like PC Lady or even Malasada. I feel like Malasada is kind of underrated. You can get some pretty good value with this. I mean, it is an item card, whereas Supporter, PC Lady is a supporter card. So for this, a trainer card, just a healing 10, but you remove a random special condition. And most likely that special condition, unless your opponent does poison you or like adds another one, you're guaranteed to awaken your Snorlax. But even then, keep in mind with Snorlax, ultimately RNG, because you do have to flip. If you get heads, then your Pokemon is not asleep anymore. So yeah, there's many ways to play this. You can either leave with Darkrai first, Arceus, but there's a lot of ways to play this. Ideally, you want to get baby Pokemon out first, then eventually sub into Darkrai EX or even Arceus EX. And then Snorlax, there's only one copy because this guy is a trump card, essentially. Most games are going to have marked Darkrai and Arceus, and then depending on the circumstance, again, yeah, sub in Snorlax. Giovanni here just to help do 140, doing a little bit more damage, essentially able to one-shot cards such as Suicuine Ex. If your opponent doesn't Giant Cape, you can just one-shot. I'm assuming this guy ran Giovanni just to kind of counter non-EXs, because there are some pretty meta-relevant non-EXs. The most popular one of the most popular is Magnezone. Yeah, this guy has 140. So if your opponent doesn't Giant Cape, Arceus or Snorlax plus a Giovanni can one-shot. And of course, Repel, pretty good early game and sometimes even towards the middle to late game. Amazing, just like essentially kind of like a pocket Sabrina. Only working against basics, but in this meta, there's a lot of basics. Darktina is still very popular. We're probably going to go over that later on. But yeah, there's also Giant Capes, again, just to kind of make sure your Pokemon doesn't get one-shotted. Overall, a very solid deck. Looking at the matches, so won a lot, of course. The ones that lost against was Guzzlord, makes sense, like on Nadell, as well as Savali Pichu. So it's very interesting with Savali Pichu, but I feel like Guzzlord EX is a lot more expected, because I mean, we'll definitely go over him later on, but this guy he gets the most value with Pokemon that require a lot of energy because of its first attack, Grindcore, which again, we'll be going over later. Okay, that was the Darkrai / Arceus EX deck. Next deck we're going to be going over is, just going to look over here. So number 7, Rockefeller, won 9 times, lost 3 times. Okay. And I just want to kind of note this one because it's a Charizard EX. And looking at all these cards, there's a lot of cards here that are expected. Like you see them all the time. Like Arceus EX, Arceus EX, Flareon's also pretty good. Darkrai, yeah, Sylveon. This kind of piques my interest. So this is the deck list right here. Let's get the image. Interesting. Okay, so purely just the Charizard line, his family right here. We have a Cleffa. That's to help with RNG basically. Make sure that you can, just in case RNG does kind of shafty, just lead with Cleffa early game and then eventually sub into Charizard EX once he's out. Yeah, so this deck, the main issue for this is Oricorio. If you guys are a new viewer or like if you're a new player to the game, you better get familiar with this card because this card is a nightmare. It's basically, every time you're designing a deck, especially if it has EXs, you always have to kind of you always have to kind of ask the question, is this Oricorio viable? Because if it's not, you're gonna have a hard time. So essentially, yeah, safeguard, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon EX. And keep in mind, this is only attack. So if it's an attack ability, status condition, or an ability that does damage, then it's free game. This guy will get shipped with that. So let's say Incineroar EX, if you use the first attack, it applies burn. This guy gets burned. Of course, Darkrai, his ability does damage. Also does damage to Oricorio. So looking at this, yeah, you have to play this kind of carefully. A pretty good tip for when you get into the game, like before you place any card down, is to see what energy your opponent has. Because if they're running lightning energy, then most likely they're going to have, of course, Oricorio. So with that being said, you have to kind of play this very carefully because the only 3 cards that can damage Oricorio are Charmander and Charmeleon. For Charmander will 4-hit KO the Oricorio. If your opponent doesn't Giant Cape, if your opponent does Giant Cape, 5-hit KO. Keep that in mind. Whereas Charmeleon can 2 to 3-hit KO. So something to note. And in my opinion, for to counter Oricorio using this deck, you're most likely just relying on this Charmeleon. So you have to play this very carefully. Otherwise, if your opponent isn't running Oricorio, then you're gonna have a lot of fun with this deck. Charizard EX, an amazing card. Debatably a better version of the old one. The old one was nice, but this guy is amazing mainly because of its first ability, just being very self-sufficient with energy as well as rare candies. I feel like rare candies and this guy's first attack make this guy just an absolute monster. If you guys remember pre-rare candies, this guy was pretty bad. He took way too long to get out, but once they added rare candies, making Stage Shoes a lot more viable, yeah, it's a lot more fun. So, of course, this deck is pairing 2 Lilies, amazing support. I feel like if you're running Stage 2s, like if you're running a deck that has like high Stage 2 usage, you might as well at least run 1 copy of Lily. I feel like that's kind of needed. We also have red right here. amazing. Doing 170, so you're one-shotting a lot of meta-relevant EXs such as Suicuine, getting a lot of value. You're gonna have a lot of fun going against Solgaleo EX, because if you get this card out before your opponent gets their Solgaleo fully built and out, yeah, you're gonna one-shot him pretty much. 180 HP. Most people who run this card paired with Leftovers instead of Giant Cape, because Leftovers does kind of counteract with the attack ability. And with that being said, 180 HP, Charizard plus red, you are doing 190. So almost as much as the original Charizard EX, and just one-shotting, getting a lot of value with just like destroying that EX. So a lot of fun. Sabrina just to mess up your opponent. If you guys are wondering why this deck isn't running a Cyrus, Charizard EX will most likely one-shot your opponent's EXs. So I feel like you are getting more value with Sabrina, especially towards the late game. Towards the early game, you can mess up your opponent with Repel, Potion, Giant Cape, Communication just for extra to help you with RNG. And I feel like this is very notable because this deck, Charizard EX came out during signing Revelry, Rare Candies came out during Celestial Guardians, and months later, it's still seeing high viability. And looking at this, again, what was it? It was 7th place. It made it 7, won 9 times, lost 3. So yeah, it's still very viable. And looking at the matches, so a lot of wins, of course. Lost against Arceus, Pikachu, and look at this. So deck list, what does this guy have? Has 2 Oricorios. Yeah, so 2 Oricorios, and in this deck, you only have 1 Charmeleon. It's gonna be a tough time. I think it's the main issue, which is why, again, I mean, it's pretty good, but also, since Oricorio is still very popular, running this might give you some anxiety, just like always thinking like, hopefully my opponent isn't running Oricorio, but if they're not, then yeah, you're gonna have a lot of fun. And yeah, that was the Charizard EX deck, and that's basically all I'm gonna be reviewing from this tournament. I'm gonna go over 2 more. So if you guys want, again, the link to this will be in the description if you want to check out all these decks, but I just want to give you kind of a little glimpse on the performance in these tournaments. So yeah, that was Pocket Mad's tournament. Next tournament we're going to be going over is the Frog EX Weekly Cup. Looking at the first place winner, we have Tapu Koko, Pikachu EX, made by Higumi. Props to him. Take a look at this. So this is the deck list right here. 2 Oricorios, of course. Interesting. So this deck is very fast-paced. That's to say the least. If anything, because Zeraora is amazing. Debatably, under certain circumstances, a lot better than Pichu. Both of them are energy supports. However, in Zeraora's case, this guy can attack, so Pichu cannot. At the end of your first turn, take a Lighting Energy from Energy Zone, attach it to this Pokemon. So yeah, your first turn, you basically get a free energy. The main downside is that if you get this guy out, if you do get this guy out any other turn aside from your first, then of course the ability will not trigger. But overall, abilities aside, this guy is essentially a better version of Oricorio. So same retreat value, same damage, and also energy requirement. 90 HP, whereas for Oricorio, 70 HP. So yeah, aside from ability, in my opinion, Zeraora is a lot better. But this is amazing because yeah, if you get this guy out your first turn, then next turn you can just elemental switch and just either feed your Pikachu or Tapu Koko and just do fast damage. I feel like that's what Lightning type really shines with. It's just like being super fast paced. Granted, I mean, a lot of their EXs are very frail. I mean, looking at Pikachu EX, HP 120. So yeah, pretty unfortunate, but at the same time, an amazing nuke, because for this deck, ideally you do want to kind of lead first with Tapu Koko, and towards your late game, you just want to nuke with Pikachu, doing 150. The main downside, of course, is that you discard all energy from this Pokemon, which is why this card is essentially your last resort. If you're struggling, pull him out, and then just one-shot a la Pokemon. This deck does not run red. However, it does run Guzma, in certain circumstances, essentially acting as a red, especially if your opponent does end up Giant Caping. And also helps if your opponent is trying to chip you with Rocky Helmet or Poison Barb. Silver red card is an amazing combo. So yeah, if you guys don't know, Silver, not as popular as other supporters in my opinion. I feel like, yeah, it's kind of like an on and off card. You get some pretty good value, but at the same time, I mean, like, there are better support cards in my opinion. It really depends on how you want to run the deck. But for this guy, if you guys don't know, your opponent reveals their hand, choose a supporter card you find there, and shuffle it into your opponent's deck. So you might get some pretty good value if you pair that with red cards. So let's say your opponent's running Sylveon EX. Their second turn, they get like 7, 8 cards. You can red them, and then on top of that, silver them, leaving them with 2 cards. A lot of value, but keep in mind, silver only works against supporter cards. However, you still get to see your opponent's hand. So if your opponent does not have any supporter cards, you can just see what they have, and you can kind of tell what they're cooking. And if you need to, you can definitely just kind of pivot. If they're about to evolve into a stage 2, then you can kind of like mentally prepare yourself, I guess. But yeah, also Cyrus, again, base two copies of Cyrus. very interesting because, yeah, this deck is very fast-paced, and depending on your opponent, I mean, of course, they might want to retreat. You're going to see a lot of usage with Tapu Koko EX, and this guy most likely won't one-shot your opponent's cards. Doing max 90, but also keep in mind 110 HP in 2 turns. Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of circumstances where your opponent will end up Cyrusing. And yeah, Cyrus, definitely one of the most effective supporter cards in this game. Like, the amount of times I've won and lost games because of Cyrus, at this point it's in the hundreds. Definitely one of the best supporter cards just overall. I really can't see this guy being phased out the meta. Like, I feel like there's a lot of decks that it's basically a must run, as you can see from this. And of course, running Repel, just again, early game, just to kind of mess up your opponent. And also late game, depending on what they're setting up. Electrical Cord, amazing support just to get that Pikachu EX fed, as well as Tapu Koko, depending on the scenario of the game. So yeah, to summarize what I said, ideally you want to lead with either Tapu Koko, Zeraora, or even Oricorio, and then towards the late game and end game, sub into Pikachu and just one-shot your opponent. So yeah, basically your win conditions are Pikachu EX and Cyrus. And then looking at the matchups, yeah, again, Suicune and Greninja are very prominent in this meta, and guess what? Both of them are weak to lightning. So that's pretty huge, meaning that even with Giant Cape, Pikachu EX can one-shot. So yeah, getting a lot of value. So if you hate Suicune EX and Greninja with a passion, then I feel like this is the best deck to invest in currently, because it's just made to counter that meta, pretty much. Just running 2 Oricorios, already messing up Suicune. Tapu Koko 2-hit KOing Greninja, and if your opponent's Greninja tries to escape, Cyrus, yeah. Pikachu, just huge counter. Like, Pikachu EX and Oricorio, just amazing counter to Suicune EX overall. So yeah, really do like to see this. Again, Lightning getting a bit of love because this archetype has never been that great. Like, there's been definitely a dry spot. I feel like it definitely does shift. Like, grass used to be huge, and then now it's just like unrunnable with the exclusion of like Buzzwole EX. That's just something to know with this game. It hasn't even been out for a month, and the meta has shifted drastically, especially with the influx of cards each month. Of course, it's kind of expected, but yeah, it's just something to note if you are trying to invest like long-term in a deck. But for in this case, I mean, Pikachu EX, I can see kind of getting phased up, whereas Tapu Koko, I feel like is still going to be pretty viable, as well as Zeraora and Oricorio. Oricorio, again, I mentioned this before, going to be always viable unless they add an ability or like a supporter card that negates abilities. If they ever add that, then yeah, this guy might be just hard nerfed. And then looking at the TCG, there are definitely cards like that that can like just counter this. If they add stadiums, they have stadiums that can just negate abilities. It'll definitely change the game if this guy gets nerfed, because I mean, he basically keeps all the EXs in check, and if he can't do that, then it's just going to be pure pandemonium. But Megas are coming, so we shall see. The next deck we're going to be going over is made by Captain, Caps Lock, Suicune Greninja. Yeah. I might as well go over this. I mean, it's very... If you play this game, you might most likely sick of this meta. But again, I mean, for new players, here it is. And also, if you're watching this like a year in advance, it's like a little kind of time capsule. It's a moment in time showing how the meta was, like, if you're watching this like 3 years in the future. So ideally for this deck, you do want to kind of lead with Suicune, because Suicune's amazing. If you guys don't know, Legendary Pulse at the end of your turn. If this Pokemon is in the active spot, draw a card. So an amazing draw support, and you can get a lot of value. Just basically helping you get Greninja fully built, as well as draw an Oricorio, because this Oricorio can definitely win you the game. But looking at this for Oricorio, this guy's running Oricorio essentially just to be a wall. You're not attacking with this card, because I mean, sure, you can definitely run a dual type like Lightning and Water, but depending on your RNG, it might hinder your chances. It might mess you up pretty much, since Suicune EX is pure water. Greninja, I mean, you can see some viability doing that. I mean, I've seen variations of that before. But if you're running Suicune EX, then it's not recommended to run dual type. Giratina, also acting kind of like a wall, as well as a ticking time bomb, because you can just have this guy building in your bench or even in your active, and your opponent knows that eventually this guy can just do 130. Just do 130, just annihilating whatever your opponent has in the active. So yeah, pretty good value. In my opinion, for this deck, you always want to keep Greninja in your bench, pretty much. And sure, he can come out later on, but I feel like towards the early game, he's better in the bench. You either want to have one of these 3 out, if anything. Granted, it's up to RNG. I've won a lot of games because my opponent has Greninja out in the active. And because of that, depending on what I'm using, one time that comes to my recollection, I was using Raikou Ex, just able to just basically bully. I don't even think he got Greninja out. I just bullied the Froakie, and at one point made a huge difference. If I knock out either Giratina or Suicune, then it's GG. Mid Greninja, the main thing about this guy is the ability. Water Shuriken. Once during your turn, you may do 20 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Any Pokemon. Active bench, getting good value, and you could pair this as well with Cyrus, so a good combo, as I stated earlier. As I briefly mentioned earlier, you could, let's say you're leading with Suicune. Suicune's fully built. Let's say for this scenario, you have 3 Pokemon in your bench. Your opponent has 1 Pokemon in their bench. In that scenario, you can Greninja ability, target your opponent's bench Pokemon, then Cyrus, and then depending on how low they are, I mean, if anything, it will also mess them up. And then you can start bullying that Pokemon with Suicune. Yeah, just amazing synergy overall. We also have Mars right here. You could use Mars, sure, towards the early game. Most likely, in my opinion, you might want to kind of save it towards the mid to late game. Because keep in mind, after one of your EXs gets knocked out, if you Mars, your opponent only gets 1 card. And depending on the stage of the game, like depending if it's like in the late game especially, that could be detrimental if you're going to win or lose. Because by that point, your opponent can have a card like Cyrus or even Sabrina. That's their win condition. If they use that in their next turn, then they can just win. So using Mars towards the late game really does hinder the chances of using said cards. And I've definitely won a lot of games like that, where I just Mars and then just mess up my opponent and they don't get the card that they need. Inversely, I've definitely lost games like that, so just something to note, getting a lot of value. But again, if your opponent's running like 2 Sylveon EXs and gets like 10 cards by their second turn, then yeah, you might as well Mars. It's good value right there. Irida just for supporting, making sure that Suicune and Greninja are healthy. Giant Cape as well, Repel. Very straightforward stuff. If you want, you can run 2 Cyruses and then 1 Irida. It's really up to you and your preference, your playstyle. And yeah, that was Suicune EX. And then looking over here, I lost twice, of course. Let's see what this guy lost to. As I mentioned earlier, Tapu Koko Pikachu. Of course, much expected. That other deck he lost to, it looks like it's up to RNG. Interesting. So it's another Suicune EX and Greninja deck. Damn, that's rough. It's literally the same deck. Pretty unfortunate for this guy. This is something to note as well. Like, sure, I mean, like, looking at this on paper, I don't want to kind of assume, like, I don't know Hamza at all, so I'm not saying this happens to him. But if you're going against a mirror deck, one thing to know is that sure, RNG, like, could determine if you win or lose. But at the same time, there's a lot of, like, small micro plays that you can definitely make, which will determine if you're going to win or lose. Especially with the mirror deck, one small move can determine if you're going to win or lose. That's why I kind of like this game, and I also kind of hate it. And yeah, that was the Frog EX Weekly Cup. The last tournament we're going to be going over is the Fraps Drinkers Monday Pocket Blitz. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. So first place is Suicune, Greninja. Not really going to go too in-depth with this. It's kind of like looking at it. Should be very much similar. Yeah, essentially, literally the same one, man. Kind of crazy. Yeah, Suicune is just a pure nightmare to go up against. In fourth place, we have Addy 1906. So yeah, let's look at this. A Guzzlord EX deck. A lot of trainer cards. I feel like as a new player, this might be a deck that you kind of want to invest in, because most of these cards you will be using in other decks. Aside from, of course, Guzzlord EX, Celesteela, even Lucamine. But keep in mind for Lucamine, I mean, they can very much add more broken Ultra Beasts later on. Will as well has like a little niche, but again, like depending on your deck and how it plays, can definitely help you out. But most of these, aside from that, like, yeah, Professor's Research, PC Lady, Red, Cyrus, Guzma. There's a lot of cards here that you will be using in other decks. So yeah, as a new player, just something to note. So a lot of RNG. Granted, you do have 2 wills, but still, a lot of RNG. So for this deck, you ideally do want to go second, because going first really does hinder you a lot. If you go first, then you're using Grindcore your third turn. If you go second, you're using your second turn. And if you guys don't know Grindcore, flip a coin until you get tails. For each heads, discard a random energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. Ideally for this deck, you do want to lead with, of course, Guzzlord EX. So have 1 Guzzlord EX in your active, 1 in your bench, and then Celesteela as well. This is amazing because Celesteela, if you guys don't know, Ultra Thrusters, once during your turn, you may switch your active Ultra Beast with 1 of your bench Pokemon. Essentially a free retreat, which is amazing because it essentially counters cards such as Repel and Sabrina. So yeah, this deck is very straightforward, but requires a bit of thinking. So ideally, depending on the circumstance, I mean, you could just leave with Guzzlord EX. Just keep on feeding him, use Grindcore to mess up your opponent, and then eventually Tyrannical Hole. And then by then, once this guy's fully built, feed your bench Guzzlord 1 energy. So once this guy dies, you can just Lucamine, and then that guy will be fully built. But there's gonna be a lot of circumstances where it's smarter and build up your second copy of Guzzlord EX. Because sure, this card is rather tanky, but depending on how much damage your opponent is doing, this guy might be dead before he can build up Tyrannical Hole. In a lot of games, what I would usually do is that I would feed this guy up until Grindcore. Then if it looks like this guy's gonna get knocked out the next turn, feed 1 energy to the bench Guzzlord EX. So once this guy dies, if you Lucamine, then yeah, just Lucamine and then pull him in, fully built. And keep in mind for Lucamine, if you guys don't know, you can only use this card if your opponent has gotten at least 1 point. So that So your first Guzzlord EX getting knocked out already triggers that. And then looking down over here, choose one of your Ultra Beasts, attach 2 random energy from your discard pile to that Pokemon. So you're getting the max value with only 2 energy attached to this Guzzlord EX. As for Celesteela, not only is this card good because of its ability, Moombahton is pretty good as well. The main downside is that it does require 3 energy. When you flip a coin, if tails, this attack does nothing. So if you get tails, nothing. Heads, getting pretty good value. And this is notable because of Oricorio. Yeah, so this card basically counters Oricorio. Coming back to what I said earlier, you always have to kind of think, like, is this deck Oricorio viable? And this is like the Oricorio condition. There's win conditions and there's Oricorio conditions. So yeah, this is definitely one of them. Does require a bit of RNG, 50-50. But to counteract that, we do have Will. So if you guys don't know, Will right here, the next time you flip any number of coins for the effect of an attack, ability, or trainer card after using this card on this turn, the first coin flip will definitely be heads. Essentially making it so that you are guaranteed to do 100 damage. However, if you're thinking of pairing Lusamine with Will, you can't do that. So let's say like your Guzzler does get knocked out by like Oricorio, and then next turn Celesteela can win you the game. Sure, you can fully build Celesteela with Lusamine. However, you can't use Will. Since you can only use one supporter card per turn, you cannot use both of them. So something to note, you can still definitely win 50-50, sure, but it's a lot less, it's not guaranteed. Yeah, all the other cards, Guzma, just kind of messing up your opponent. PC Lady just to help with sustainability. Red, a little bit more damage. Cyrus, again, if they try to retreat. Rocky Helmet, Repel. So Mars as well, yeah, getting pretty good value. So yeah, I feel like this deck is a lot of fun. If you go second, if you go first, then depending on your opponent's RNG as well, it might be this living hell. Yeah, like I like this deck, but again, I feel like it might be recency bias, but I feel like most of the times I want to kind of see a statistic on this. Like Dina could definitely publish something like that, like your personal statistic, but I'm most like I'm pretty sure I get heads a lot more than tails. Like it's again 50-50 RNG. But I feel like that's like a kind of like a weird feature they could definitely add. Like in your profile, they can just add like percentage of like head, like the head to tails ratio. They can definitely add like that statistic just for fun. There's gonna be a lot of Reddit posts just being like, I'm screwed. It's over for me. But they can very much revamp that. It's a little side tangent. I swear this is not gonna be that long, but they can very much, okay, so they can make it so like flip heads or tails. If you get heads, then you can determine if you want to go first or second. I feel like that is better because there's definitely a lot of decks that do kind of benefit going first compared to second, and then vice versa. So yeah, depending on your playstyle, I mean, going first could definitely help you out. So they can definitely add that. But again, I mean, it's like a little thing they could add. I mean, it's not really that necessary. Slightly controversial, but yeah, there's a lot of card games that kind of implement that feature. The last deck we're going to be going over is Darktina, number 14, made by Yoji14. I'm going to make this kind of brief because this is a pretty long video. If you guys stuck to this portion, then again, props to you guys. Really do appreciate the support, and hopefully you're enjoying this. Hopefully it's informative as well as a little tidbit entertaining. I tried to be, but it's a deck right here. Again, this, I feel like as a new player, this is another good deck to invest in. Most of these cards, if not all, are in Deluxe EX. As you have seen from previous decks in this video, both of these cards are very prominent in other decks. And yeah, for the foreseeable future, I can very much see it. I don't know. I mean, it's up to your playstyle. I feel like this deck, playstyle wise, I mean, it's somewhat slow. It isn't really that fast paced. It really is up to you. In my opinion, I kind of like it, but at the same time, I mean, it feels kind of interesting to use, especially with the prominence of Oricorio. This deck can definitely counter Oricorio, but I've had a lot of games where I would just tie. Not in this meta, but in previous ones, more so. But I would just tie because my opponent, I'm just like either out healing or like just doing chip damage and just like chipping that Oricorio down. And then we get to the point like turn 30, we're like, yeah, nobody's winning this. So Darktina, Darkrai, because if you go first, by the time Darkrai EX is built, Giratina will be as well. Pretty good as well, because the main downside for Giratina EX is that after using the ability, sure, he gets a free psychic energy, but it ends your turn, meaning that you cannot attack. So both of them are built, then it's pretty good because after Darkrai EX gets knocked out, subbing Giratina and then he's fully built, just attack. You don't have to use Broken Space Spell one more turn. And yeah, Mars, again, getting good value once one of your EXs gets knocked out. Just use Mars, bringing them down to basically one card. Bringing them down to one card, PC Lady red, very expected, very straightforward to use. Again, we have Guzma, also Sabrina Repel, Potion, Giant Cape. But yeah, to summarize what I said, lead with Darkrai EX, Giratina EX in the bench. Once Darkrai EX gets knocked out, subbing Giratina and to sweep your opponent. However, this is hard to explain, but if you use this deck, you kind of know what I'm talking about. There's gonna be a lot of circumstances where your third turn, if you do go first, if you do feed Darkrai EX, he's gonna be fully built and you can attack, sure. But depending on the circumstance, depending on like your opponent's cards, it might be more beneficial to not attack. and just use Giratina's ability, especially towards the mid to late game, because keep in mind, Giratina paired with Darkrai EX's ability does 150, paired with red does 170. So this card can definitely be your win condition, especially if that Darkrai EX cannot one-shot your opponent's active. Like, let's say you have 1 point, your opponent has Suicuine Ex out, so you can attack with Darkrai EX, but it's a 2-hit KO. And by then, I mean, your opponent can definitely either retreat or a Rita could mess you up a little bit. And yeah, I mean, granted there is Cyrus, but depending on your hand, depending on your RNG, you might not have that. Whereas you might have red or even Guzma. So your opponent having a fully built Suicune, Giant Caped, is 160 HP. Giratina paired with red or even Guzma, you're essentially doing 170. Just one-shotting, again, depending on the circumstance of the game. And yeah, that's basically Giratina, Darktina in a nutshell. Their non-canonical, canonical ship name. Yep, as I always say. But yeah, that's a weekly meta report. Overall, very much expected. I feel like the meta hasn't really shifted as much compared to last month. No new cards were added. Much expected. But to end off this video, I'm going to be using this deck right here, Darktina in ranked. It's a little short battle. Hopefully it's not going to be too long because this video is already rather long. And if you guys stuck to this portion of this video, props to you. And yeah, let's see how this deck performs in ranked. All right, here we are in rank, going first. Nice. Okay, so we have one Darkrai EX. Hopefully we can get a Giratina. If not, then we might as well have just gone second. Again, I said going first is good if you have Giratina EX, because if not, it will mess up the process. So interesting, using Sudowoodo. Okay, perfect. This is a very interesting deck. Interesting. The main downside is that Cleffa will get some value for 2 turns, but for now, very straightforward. Might as well just Rocket Helmet early in the game, just to kind of trigger if he does use Guzma, because keep in mind, we are running 2 Rocky Helmets. So, okay, yep. Subs in Sudowoodo. Doesn't even use Cleffa. Cleffa's just there to just say hi. Just in case, okay, he might Mars or red card us, so just in case, you do this. Now, this Darkrai might be dead in a couple turns, but we're setting up for this Giratina, which, I mean, we shall see how it turns out, because he is running Skull Fossil, so he is running Rampardos. And Rampardos might be, if you want to look at it, if you think about it, is kind of a counter to Giratina EX. Because from what I remember, I'm pretty sure it has like 160 HP. Perfect. Hopefully you can get a Darkrai. So able to tank Giratina even with the Darkrai buff. But for now, yeah, very straightforward. Just do this. Chip in Sudowoodo. Sudowoodo is dead. So now it's really ultimately up to RNG. If he can get Rampardos out, we might struggle a bit. But if he does knock out Darkrai Ex, then Giratina can just one-shot. He's kind of stalling, but at the same time, when it comes to energy, we are at a pretty good advantage. So yeah, let's end our turn with Broken Space Bellow. I could have placed his Giratina EX, but it might hinder us in the long run, especially if he does end up Marsing. I might put him out next turn, but ideally, I feel like you get more value with having another Darkrai EX out. Because again, yeah, you can do 150. Subs in Lucario, but there's really nothing he could do. This is where RNG comes in. He has 2 cards left. We have Mars. So if you can Mars this basically guarantees the win unless he gets lucky with a Professor's Research. So sub in Giratina. Damn, we got Guzma. Okay, so yeah, Giratina is fully built as I stated. And sure, why not? I'm going to put him down. Could lose us the game, but we shall see. If he does end up Marsing or red carding us, because we do have Leaf. So if he does try to kind of Sabrina, then we can kind of counteract that. But just to give him a little bit of false hope. Yeah, 130. Could Rocky Helmet, but not really gain much value. It really is up to Rampardos. If he pulls Rampardos right now, it's GG. If not, then I win. He's 11 cards. Yep, GG. Yep, that's Darktina in a nutshell. A very interesting battle to end this, but yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want more. Really do enjoy doing these. I want to do this again, I want to keep on doing this every week. Huge pain to edit, because again, I do stutter a lot. I'm still trying to get comfortable talking. Does not help with things, but yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys on my next video. Peace.